Welcome to the Healthcare Facility Reporting System (HCFRS) training module series. Module 2: Create, Edit, and Submit Case. Let's review the overall process of creating and submitting a case. If an incident or SRE occurs at your facility that requires reporting to DPH, you should first gather information about the event. Once you have enough information regarding the incident, you can start entering the case into the system to be submitted for review by DPH. If your facility is a hospital or ambulatory surgical center, and the case falls under the SRE category, you will also need to enter and submit the 30-day report, which will be covered in Module 4. To create a case, you will first need to log in to HCFRS. If you need help logging in, refer to the steps in Module 1. When you log in, you will be taken to the HCFRS home page. From here, click on the Create Case icon in the navigation toolbar at the top left-hand side of the page. The Create Case icon is represented by the blank page icon. This will open the Create Case screen. The system has the ability to process other types of cases besides incidents. These types of cases are identified by the case type. In the Event Information section, make sure that the DPH Intake Report option is selected for the case type. The system will auto-populate facility information in the Facility section based on the facility with which you are associated. This will streamline the reporting process and act as a security measure to ensure that users from other facilities are not creating cases for your facility. After verifying your facility information, click the Save button. The system will then create the shell of the case and you will be brought to the case dashboard. Let's now review the information on the case dashboard screen. This is the main page for a case and it contains all of the information that pertains to the case. Note that the name of the page, Case Dashboard, does not appear on the page. The screen is broken down into two sections, the Basic Information section in top half of the screen, and the Event Data and Facilities Information in bottom half of the screen. The Basic Information section contains important summary information of the case being created. Let's review the information presented in this section. Case ID, the auto-generated number that uniquely identifies a case. Please note that the case ID will be automatically changed by the system upon submission to DPH. This will be covered in greater detail later in this module. Case type, this signifies the type of case that was previously selected on the Create Case screen. For our purposes, this will always be DPH Intake Report. Primary facility, this is the facility to which this case corresponds. Dates, this is the date that the case was created. Intake report status, this is the system status of the report. For our purposes this is always open. Attachments, this will display the number of documents attached to this case. There is also an Add link that will give you the ability to attach documents to the case. In the Notes field, you can submit a question to DPH or reply to a question from DPH. The second section of the case dashboard is the Event Data and Facilities Information. This section contains the detailed information regarding the case and is the section where the data entry will be performed. This section contains two tabs, Event Data and Facilities. Let's start with the first tab, Event Data. The Event Data tab is where the electronic data entry forms are held. These electronic forms are called question packages and are the electronic representations of paper forms. Depending on different events or different answers to questions, new question packages can appear that will be required to be filled out. Right now there are two question packages available. The question packages table tracks when the question package was last updated and by whom. Also, the status of the question package will track if there are any required questions that still need to be answered. We will see the status of the question package change later in this module. Under the question package table is where the available actions drop-down list appears. This drop-down menu shows the actions available to you at any given point in time for a case. Depending on the status of the case and the type of user you are, different actions will be available to you. To start, the available actions are Enter Intake Report and Submit Intake Report. Once the case is submitted, the Enter Intake Report and Submit Intake Report options are removed since the case has already been submitted. Now let's proceed to the second tab, Facilities. This tab holds information regarding the facility, name, address, and status. Now that we have had an overview of the case dashboard, we will start to enter an intake report. While in the Event Data tab, in the Available Actions drop-down list, select Event 1. Enter intake report, and then click the Start Action button. This will open the intake report. Please note, make sure that you have opened the intake report and that you are not in read-only mode by making sure that the Save button is active. This is important because it is possible to enter data in read-only mode, but not possible to actually save that data entry. The top of the screen contains the name of the facility and the facility ID after the words Enter Intake Report. For security reasons, this is redacted in the screenshot. It also has the Save and Cancel buttons. There is also a new option to Save and Stay. Clicking Save and Stay will save any changes you make and keep you on this screen. If you skim through the whole screen, you will notice that there are some questions with asterisks in front of them with their answer field highlighted in pink or yellow, depending on your web browser. These questions are required questions. Required questions are those that need to be answered in order to complete the intake report. You can still save the form and leave the case without answering the required questions, but you will not be able to submit the report without answering them. This operates slightly differently from most web forms in that this system will let you navigate to another page without answering the required questions. The status of the intake report will also change from incomplete to complete when all of the required questions are answered. Now let's look at the form in detail and create a case for an incident. The screen includes the following sections: reporter information, patient information, incident information. Opioid monthly reporting if applicable, mandatory nurse overtime if applicable. Notification, witness information, accused information and the required field, incident narrative. If your facility is a hospital or ambulatory surgical center, and the case is being created for a serious reportable event, SRE, there may be additional fields and sections as well. This will be covered later in this module. Let's start with the first section, the reporter information section. A reporter is the person who reports the incident to DPH. In this case, since the facility is reporting the incident, the reporter is you, the facility user. Because the system knows who you are, it automatically fills out the reporter and reporter title questions for you and makes it so that they cannot be changed. This only happens if the user is a facility user and not a DPH user. Because of this, the HCFRS is only a self-reporting system for facilities. If a facility is reporting on an incident that occurred at a different facility, the facility will need to fax the report to DPH. The next section is the patient information section. This section will contain the demographic information of the patient involved in the incident, if there is a patient. To start, first answer the question, enter a patient, resident, client, to signal how you want to capture the patient information. You can select yes, no, or multiple patients. If you select yes, the form will expand with questions that pertain to the patient. You would enter the first and last name of the patient. Depending on what type of facility you are a member of, different questions may appear. For example, some facilities such as hospitals are required to enter race and ethnicity information for patient while other facilities are not. In this section, some questions allow for multiple answers to be selected. For example, the cognitive level question. This question has its answers being represented by checkboxes. The user should check all of the checkboxes that pertain to the patient. The other checkbox questions operate in the same way. The system also allows the entry of multiple patients for an incident. This could happen in a patient-to-patient altercation incident. To handle this situation, enter in the first patient as we just described. After the information for the first patient is complete, click on the Add New link that appears next to the Enter a Patient, Resident, Client question and then select Yes to the newly created question. This will create another block of patient questions that can be used to enter information about the second patient. The system can handle an unlimited number of additional patients. The next option for the Enter a Patient, Resident, Client question is Multiple patients but no demographic information. This option should be selected when there is an incident where multiple patients are involved, but there isn't a chance to gather their demographic information. For example, if there is a fire at a facility, multiple patients will be affected, but their information isn't expected to be known. However, if there is an incident that affects many individuals and the demographic data is available, then the Yes option and the Add New link should be selected and the patient's demographic information entered. The last option for the Enter a Patient, Resident, Client question is the No option. This should be selected when there is an incident involving the facility, but no patient in particular was affected. An example of this is laundry equipment out of service. Next is the Incident Information section. This section holds all the information regarding the incident. For questions that have a date as the answer, it is recommended that you use the calendar picker for entering the date. The calendar picker allows you to pick a date from a scrollable calendar instead of manually typing in the date. If you choose to type the date in manually, the date must be entered in the correct DDYY format. If this format isn't followed, then the system will prompt you with an error. Similarly, while entering incident time, you will have to make sure that you have entered the correct time format of immediately followed by PM. You are required to enter incident allegation type. If you select opioid monthly reporting or mandatory nurse overtime, then the appropriate section will have additional fields for you to fill in. If the case is not an SRE, you will select non-SRE in the Select SRE category question. Users should also note that they have the ability to enter in multiple values for any fields on the form where they see an Add New link. These questions operate in the same way that you are able to enter in multiple patients in the Patient section. The incident narrative is a text area question and is required. All text area questions allow for the entry of up to 60,000 characters if needed. Please note, text typed into the incident narrative text area cannot be saved while the text area is active. In order to save typed text, users must first click outside of the incident narrative text area to inactivate the text area. Then click Save button, not shown, at the top or bottom of the screen. If your facility is a hospital or ambulatory surgical center, the Select SRE category question will be displayed, as well as additional sections for corrective measures and person in charge at facility during incident. You also have the ability to enter in multiple values for any fields on the form where you see an Add New link. These questions operate in the same way that you were able to enter in multiple patients in the Patient section. If this case is an SRE, then at least one of the categories needs to be selected, excluding the non-SRE option. If an SRE category is selected, then the SRE attestation section appears. The SRE attestation section has a checklist of statements that need to be verified as complete. Check the boxes in order to verify the statements. This section also contains questions regarding the patient's insurance details represented by two fields: patient insurer and insurance identification number. The corrective measures section holds information regarding any internal investigation or corrective measures that were taken. In the person in charge at facility during incident section, you can enter the first name, last name, and the title of the person who was in charge at the facility when the incident occurred. You can also record whether or not this person was directly involved with the incident. In the notifications section, you can record whether or not any notifications were made to the family, police, or the patient's MD. If you select yes for the "Was the patient MD notified?" question, the system will display questions asking for the MD's name. In the witness information section, you will be able to select the following options: yes, no, NA, or unknown. When you select yes, the following fields will be enabled for you to enter the details about the witness: first name, last name, title, and was the witness directly involved. Once you have entered the witness information, you will have the option to enter additional witness information by clicking on the Add New link. In the accused information section, the format is similar to the witness information section. You can select yes, no, NA, or unknown for "Is there an accused?" field. Similar to the witness section, you can add more details about the accused once you have selected yes as an option. After filling out all of the questions, click on the Save button at the bottom of the page or at the top of the page. This will return you to the case dashboard. When you click the Save and Stay button, your work on a case will be saved, and you will remain on the same screen so you can continue to edit the case. Another new feature in HCFRS is the addition of a timeout warning. Previously, if the system was idle for 30 minutes, you would be logged out without warning and your unsaved work would be lost. In the new system, you will first receive a warning after 25 minutes. This will give you time to save your work. If after 5 more minutes, for a total of 30 minutes, the system is still inactive, then you will be logged out and your unsaved work would be lost. Now that you have entered some information for the case into the HCFRS, you have the option of submitting the case to DPH now or later. If the case is complete, it can be submitted now, but if you are not ready to submit the case, you can close the case and come back to it later to complete it. Note that the status column at the extreme right of the Event Data tab of the Event Information section indicates whether the intake report is complete. If the intake report status says incomplete, you can open the report again and complete the remaining fields. For now, let's leave the case and come back to it later to submit. Before leaving the case, make sure that you have made note of at least the following details from the case dashboard: case ID, and facility details, name and address. These details will be helpful when you continue with the training module. Now we are ready to leave and close the case. At the top left of the screen is the navigation toolbar. On the top right side of the screen is an X. Click the X to close the case. When you are working on a case, the system locks the case from editing by other users. If you have authorization to the case, you can view the case while the system has a lock on it, but you will not be able to edit or add any information to it. This feature is in place to prevent users from overwriting each other if there are multiple users entering in data for the same case. Clicking on the X to close the case will tell the system that you are finished working on the case and to release the lock on it. If you do not click the X to close the case, then the system will keep the lock on the case for 30 minutes. As you can see, it is important to click on the X to leave the case when you are finished editing a case. OK, now click the X to close and leave the case. Once the case is closed, you will be returned to the HCFRS home page. Since we just created a case, but have not submitted it, you will be able to find it in the Incident Reports Awaiting Submission workflow on the HCFRS home page. A workflow is a queue of items that require your attention. As a user works on a case, the case will be removed from the workflow if the required work is performed. Here we see that the Incident Reports Awaiting Submission workflow holds cases that have been started, but have not been submitted to DPH yet. If you click Incident Reports Awaiting Submission, you will see a list of these cases. You can then open the case by clicking on the case ID. Alternatively, if you had worked on the case recently, you can go to the Recently Viewed Cases table on the left-hand side of the screen and click the case ID. Now that you know how to create a case, let's see how to use the edit functionality. Previously, when creating a case, we saw that there are many questions in the intake report. It is possible to answer some of the questions when creating a case, and then save and come back to it at a later time to continue your progress. Let's look at an example by editing the case that we have just created. We will go into more detail about the system's exhaustive search functionality in Module 3. This will bring you to the case dashboard for the case. Now open the intake report we saw earlier by selecting Enter Intake Report from the available action and clicking the Start Action button. Once you are in the Enter Intake Report screen, you can edit any of the fields and complete any unanswered fields. When you are finished editing, click the Save button at the top or bottom of the screen to save changes. You can also click the Save and Stay button to save changes and remain on the screen to make further changes. After 25 minutes of inactivity, you will receive a warning. After 5 more minutes, you will be logged out automatically and lose any unsaved changes. When you are ready to leave the case, click the X in upper right-hand corner. After creating and entering the intake report details, you can submit the case to DPH. Submitting a case will complete the intake report process. Let's see an example of this by submitting the case that we just created and edited. On the HCFRS homepage, click the Incident Reports Awaiting Submission workflow in the top left box on the page. As previously stated, a workflow is a queue of items that require your attention. From the Incidents Reports Awaiting Submission workflow, we can find your case. Click on the case ID and this will open the case dashboard for the case. Under Available Actions, select Submit Intake Report. Click Start Action. This takes you to the Submit Intake Report package page. This contains the report submissions, follow-up conversations, and incident report submission confirmation sections. Click the checkbox, Yes, I have completed all of the required fields and have confirmed that intake report status is complete. Follow-up conversations allows you to include a message regarding the submission that is viewable by DPH. Information on incidents should be included in the intake report and not in the comments. Fields in incident report submission cannot be edited and are auto-completed by the system. Click the Save button to submit the report. You are now returned to the case dashboard. Case ID has changed. When you created the case, this was a 10-digit auto-generated ID. When case is submitted, the first 4 characters of the case ID refer to the facility that originated the case. This new case ID should be used going forward. Enter an intake report and submit an intake report are no longer available actions. You can still open case by clicking Intake Report and click Open as Read-Only button. Or double-click Intake Report from the question package table. You will not be able to make changes once submitted. Case no longer appears in the incident reports awaiting submission workflow on HCFRS home page. When you view the case in read-only mode, you can review data after you submitted it. The Save button is disabled. You can click the Cancel button to return to the case dashboard. During the DPH review process, DPH has the ability to send a case back to you if more information is required. In such an instance, you will receive an email notification stating, "Intake report requires your attention." When that happens, you will be able to access the case that has been returned for further information. Click on the Incident Reports Awaiting Submission link. You can tell if a case is awaiting first submission or was sent back by DPH by looking at the case ID. If it is prefixed with the facility ID, then it was sent back by DPH. Otherwise, it will be the 10-digit case ID. If it was sent back by DPH, go to Case by clicking on the case ID. In the Available Actions drop-down menu, select Submit Intake Report, then click Start Action. Review the follow-up comments, and then enter in the requested information in the Intake Report section. Then submit again. This concludes the HCFRS Training Module 2, Create, Edit and Submit Cases. Thank you for your time. Please proceed to the next module in this training series.